So excited to have you here with me today. I'm a big fan of everything that you've worked on, and this was a wonderful book to read. Really felt like I got an inside seat into really this experience that you had, this incredible experience that you had with and are still
Yeah.
having. Um, and wow, you have quite a memory. I mean, you remember the names of like roommates that you had and people that you met. Like I was impressed by how much. Do you have like a photographic memory or something? Like there was a
Well,
lot of detail in there.
people have remarked about that. I guess I have a good memory. I don't know that it's quite photographic, although it may be. I'm not sure. But I
You just
all during my Talking Heads and Tom Tom Club experience, even back in college, before that, I thought you should be keeping a diary, Chris. You should really be keeping a diary, 'cause
yeah,
so you can remember all this later.
right, exactly.
And
So
I never did. I
oh
never did
man,
keep a diary. I'm kicking myself because some people were smart. Like my friend Duncan Hanna has written a very good book, which is publishing his diaries from the '70s, and I think
right.
it's called 21st Century Boy is the name of the book, and I highly recommend it. And also my friend Chris Stein, for example, Debbie Harry's songwriting
Yeah,
partner and former boyfriend. He took photographs of the band, and now he's publishing these great books of photographs from back in the '70s and the '80s. And I thought, why didn't I do that?
well, you
But
did a lot of other good things.
I did. But I did. One reason I wrote this book was so that I could, have a more or less accurate. I mean, I consider it to be very honest and accurate what I write about in the book, and it's something that needs to be said, and so I'm saying it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk. I want to go through some of these amazing memories of yours, and first of all, let's go back to your RISD days. Um, you, the book is much a memoir, but it's also really a love story about your love for Tina, your
Yeah,
wife,
yeah.
and also band member. And let's talk first about how you met her, because it's a very romantic story, and it turns out you guys had aside from both being artists, you both had quite a bit in common with your military parents had military backgrounds. And tell me a
Yeah,
little bit about how you first met her and how you ended up of ultimately wooing her and courting her.
yeah. Okay. It was a time of year, like right about now, back to school time, and I was beginning my second year at the Rhode Island School of Design, which we call RISD.
Yep.
And it was like the first day of classes, or maybe the second day. And I was sitting in this little park in the center of the campus that the students call the RISD Beach. And, kids would sit there between classes and, you know, kid around with each other and get high and exchange gossip and stuff like that. I was sitting there with a friend of mine who was an artist model at the school. His name was, everybody knew him as Charlie the Model. He's a big, like 6'4", barrel chested, very physically fit guy, older than me, but some people say he had been shell shocked in World War II or the Korean War.
Mm.
But in any case, he was a different kind of guy, but totally sweet and friendly with everybody on campus. Like if you ever said hello to him, he would refer to you as his friend, like "Hello, friend." So
Yeah.
I said I was sitting there with Charlie the Model, and all of a sudden this girl came whizzing by on her yellow, like sort of beat up yellow 3-speed bicycle, and she was wearing cut off shorts, really short, and a blue and white striped sailor shirt. And she
See
had,
what I say about your memory? Like, how do you even remember the color of her shirt? That's amazing.
well,
It was love. It's ingrained in your heart.
yes. Also, it's a typical shirt from Brittany in France, which is where her mother grew
Oh,
up.
okay. Okay. Yeah, that's right.
And so I know the shirt. But anyway, and she had like beautiful, blonde hair blowing in the wind as she whizzed by on her bicycle. And I looked at her and I said, "Wow, Charlie, did you see her?" And Charlie said, "Oh yes, that's my friend Martina."
Uh-huh.
Oh, Martina. So she had transferred into the school from Barnard College in New York. So she was one of the new kids, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, why haven't I seen her before? Oh, that's why. She's one of the new kids. And the next day I had a painting class, a figure painting class taught by the great Richard Merkin, who was a painter who is known for his paintings of like gangsters and their malls and stuff like that. And
Right.
he's also on the cover of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Oh, how
He's
cool.
one of the faces in the background overlooking the Beatles. And he was friends with the guy, Peter Blake, Sir Peter Blake, who did that album cover. So anyway, I'm in Richard Merkin's painting class and setting up my easel. It's the first day of the class, and I look across the room, and there's Martina. And I said to myself, "Oh man, there's Martina. How am I gonna introduce myself to her?" Because I never really thought of myself as a very smooth guy with the ladies. I was kind of shy, especially around girls that I found attractive,
Yep.
So at the end of the class, well, the whole class, I'm looking over at Tina thinking, wow, she's so fantastic. And at the end of the class, a friend of mine walked over to Tina and said in a very effete voice, "Well, obviously you have no idea what you're doing." And I thought, what? And so I said, "Oh, this is my opportunity." And I walked over, gently pushed my friend out of the way, and I said, "I apologize for my friend's bad behavior. Obviously, he doesn't know what he's doing."
Yeah.
And,
Nice.
I said, "My name's Chris." And she said, "Oh, my name's Tina." And I said, "I really like this class." And she said, "So do I." And we started talking, and she already had a boyfriend, of course.
Always.
Yeah. And in fact, I already had a girlfriend, another person. But we became friends, and eventually one day we fell into each other's arms,
Yeah.
And
you were quite the genius of love back then, and you didn't even know it. I think later you heard her you were sort of friends at one point, and you heard her crying in the bushes, or you heard a sound of somebody crying in the bushes, and you walked by and it was Tina, and you comforted her, and that was kind of the beginning of
yes.
romance.
She had just broken up with her boyfriend, and she was having a really bad night. She had some kind of illness, bronchitis or a bad cold or something. And she had taken a Sudafed or something like that. And she was drinking blackberry brandy out of the bottle, like in the bushes. And she was just sobbing, having a terrible time. And I heard this sobbing, and I thought, well, who is that? I've got to see if that person's all right. And it turned out it was Tina.
Wow.
And when I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "No, I feel terrible." And I said, "You want to go back to my place?" And she said, "Yes."
And the rest is history.
Yeah.
Well, so around this time, or maybe a little bit later from this time, you meet David Byrne. And I was interested. I did not realize, people always hear this story. Oh, they all went to college together at Rhode Island School of Design, but he actually wasn't going there, right? He had dropped out, but he was just living in the area in Providence.
Yeah, he dropped out after our freshman year, but then he spent a year or so traveling around the country. I think he maybe re-enrolled in the Maryland College of Art, which is where he was from. And anyway, he was hitchhiking around the country, and then he decided he wanted to come back to RISD, and he came back to Providence. The school actually declined his request for readmission.
They probably regret that one, but yeah.
Yeah, they probably do. Yeah. But anyway, he decided to continue to just hang out, and he audited some classes. Like he came with me to this class we had about this new thing called conceptual art, and he was very interested in that, as I was. And one day, a mutual friend came to me and said, well, actually, just before the conceptual art class, a mutual friend who was a film student came to me and said, I'm making a student film about my girlfriend getting run over by a car. I wonder, he knew I played drums. He said, I wonder if you could create some music for it. And I said, sure. Bring your Nagra tape recorder over to the carriage house where Tina lives. That's where I was keeping my drums, thanks to her.
Yeah.
And we'll record something. And he said, I'm going to bring a friend along too who plays guitar. I said, fine. So the next day, we were going to make this recording of, he wanted something very dissonant, cacophonous that, crescendoed and then faded out. And I said, oh, sure, we could do that. And it turned out when he came in, he said, this is my friend David Byrne. And I said, oh, cool. I had known David a little bit. We weren't friends or anything, but the school was small enough that I had seen him around. But he really changed his look. When we were in school together in the freshman year, he had a big long beard, like I refer to it as Rasputin.
Yeah.
And he cut his hair himself, so it was kind of like really choppy and short.
He cut his hair himself. Interesting.
Yeah. And he had a whole different look, and now he had bleached blonde hair. He actually bleached it with Clorox.
Okay.
And
wow, that doesn't seem too safe.
Very dark eyebrows that didn't match the hair on the top of his head, and his guitar was covered in leopard skin contact paper, so it was like a leopard skin guitar. And I thought, wow, David's got a whole new look going on.
Yeah,
but
I guess at RISD, at your school, that was kind of the thing, right? People were always people were very, what we call creative. Yeah, exactly.
We were very creative.
And this was in the 70s, early 70s.
Yeah, this is we're talking 1973.
Right.
And so afterwards I said, we did the thing for the film, and I think we got it in one take probably. And then I said to David, I've been thinking about starting a band, just solely for the entertainment of our friends, no big deal or anything, just to play at parties and maybe some dances and things. Would you be interested? And he said, I think so. And I said, it was very interesting what we just played, what we played just now. And he said, well, I can do other stuff than that. And I said, okay, cool. And together we started a band called the Artistics. And we played for a couple of years around the RISD campus and for school dances. And it was really fun,
Yeah, it sounds... I can't imagine and it was you, and Tina wasn't in the band at this point.
Tina was not in the band.
Because she didn't play an instrument, right?
I invited her to be in the band because excuse me, I was kind of the person who organized things. And I tried to get Tina to join the band. I had this idea that it would be great to have a woman in the band and somebody like Tina who shares a similar artistic aesthetic,
Right.
and looks great, you know. But she said, no way. That's for guys. That's a boys club.
Yeah.
But I'll be supportive of you in any musical things you want to do.
Right.
Okay, fine. I understood where she was coming from. And in fact, she was right. Rock and roll was very much a boys club or young men's club. And she changed that to a certain extent.
She did.
You know? But
so you
anyway,
moved. Yeah. So at that point, you and Dave and you guys are in this band together. And when you moved so that you decide to move to New York after school, and you really describe in New York that it's so lost now. I don't know the last time you've been down to the Bowery, but you know,
it's been since March.
Okay, you know? Yeah, me too. Oh, maybe I think I was back in New York in February. My mom still lives in New York. I'm in LA now, but the you know, so you move to New York and you don't have any money, and like many young artists, you decide to live downtown where it's cheaper, but it is like just a hellhole in the Bowery. I mean, it's just the worst, right? You're talking about, you know, people peeing all over the place, and but what was really interesting to me, and I feel so fortunate that I was able to have experienced CBGB before it closed down, but is that you kind of knew that other bands had their sort of bar that they played in, and you sort of decided that you were going to find your bar, right, to play in.
Yeah.
And you just happened to pick this little bar, unknown bar called CBGB's. Down there on Houston, or maybe it's on Bowery. No, it's not on Houston. It was on the Bowery. And talk about that. Talk about your first experience kind of walking in there. And it wasn't even, I don't think they even had like music when you went in there, or it was, you know, the first.
It was a quiet night. When I first moved to New York, the first day I was in New York, I went to visit my friend, the painter Jamie Douglas, and he's a great painter, and he had a loft at 52 Bond Street, which Bond Street intersects the Bowery just above Bleecker Street. And I said, Jamie, how you doing? And he said, oh, it's great to see you, Chris. He said, I know you're interested in forming a band and interested in music, and there's something going on at that bar across the street. It's called CBGB's. You should check it out. And so I said, oh, I will, thank you. And I went that night, and there was nobody there. There was a bartender. I ordered a beer, and there was no music. Not even the jukebox was playing. And but I heard a pool game going on in the very back of the club. So I wandered back that way, kind of tripping over the uneven floor, you know, which it was always like that. If you weren't careful, you would trip and fall on your face.
Right.
There were some guys, Latino guys, shooting pool, and I watched them for a while. I'm drinking my Rolling Rock beer, and they eventually I said, "Is there going to be any music tonight?" And one guy who was dressed in a silver sharkskin suit with like a black shirt, and I think it was either white tie or a purple tie. Anyway, and he had these big late period Elvis Presley silver sunglasses on. And I said, any music going on tonight? And he said, no, man, but come back this weekend. The Ramones will be here. And I thought, oh, the Ramones, they must be a Mexican band.
Exactly.
And
note that the Ramones were not a famous band at this point.
The Ramones were
very early days.
Very unknown. They were just getting started. And I did come back that weekend, and the Ramones were there. And it was so much fun because they, at that point in their career, they would actually stop in the middle of a set and argue with each other on stage. Like Dee Dee would say, he would cut the band and he'd say, "No, Johnny, I don't want to play. I don't want to go down to the basement. I want to play. I don't want to walk around with you." So to me, they were, speaking of conceptual art, this was like a perfect conceptual art piece to me, the Ramones.
And the
But
look, right? Did they have the look at that point? The
they
Ramones look?
didn't quite have their look together, but they had their haircuts.
Yeah.
And the rest of it came soon after. But they were just amazing to me. And then the next weekend, Patti Smith played at CBGB's, and the weekend after that, Television, and the weekend after that, the precursor of Blondie called The Angel and the Snake, and so that's when I first saw Debbie Harry, and I was like, "Whoa, my God!" And
Why? Because her talent, and was she just beautiful and everything?
she was just so beautiful, and her voice was so pure and sounded so sweet in such a rough atmosphere.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful contrast.
What an experience. Yeah. You told a story about Debbie Harry where you asked her to be in your band at one point.
Yeah. Not long after that, David and I were searching to find people to join our band, but people would look at us and say, "I don't think so," and we didn't have the look that
right. Were you guys kind of more art school?
Well, yeah, we were too. We were not New York dolls enough.
Okay.
For most of the musicians we were meeting. That was what was happening then, was David Bowie, the New York Dolls.
Right, the glam rock kind of thing.
Yeah. And so there was still a lot of snakeskin boots and, satin trousers and things like that. But anyway, Debbie looked at it. I walked up to Debbie, and David was standing behind me, and I said, "You sounded wonderful tonight. David, this is David Byrne. He and I are starting a band, and we'd like to know if you'd be interested in singing with us." And she said, "Well, I've already got a band, but you can buy me a drink." And so I bought her a drink, and that was the beginning of a tremendous friendship which continues to this.
Oh, that's great.
Debbie was always, every day, a lovely person, really generous with her time, super polite with her fans, and she even, she even did cameos and videos for us with Tom Tom Club, like in Downtown Rockers video. I called her up, basically begging her to do a cameo in our video, and she said, "Sure, when you want to do it," So she's always been like that.
And she had similar taste to you in music back then, because
she wrote a nice blurb too.
Oh, that's awesome.
She says, "Remain in Love has great storytelling and amazing detail about adventures that Chris and I have shared in our parallel universes. As the Brits say, I'm gobsmacked. I devoured this book and all the memories and all the love Chris has for Tina, one of the most potent examples of living the dream. Deborah Harry, author of Face It."
Yeah, she just came out with a memoir as well fairly recently.
She did.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. And it's so great how, friendly you were with these guys. It wasn't that much acrimony at that time. So you end up opening for the Ramones. Your first gig in CBGB's is that you opened for the Ramones, right?
Yes, that's correct. And I went over. We decided it was May of 1975. We moved to New York in the autumn of '74, and by May of '75, we felt like we had enough. By this time, Tina had come on board with the band.
And she was playing bass.
And so we were a trio: guitar, bass, and drums. And David ended up being the vocalist. And Oh, I'm sorry. Where was
Wait,
I?
no, yeah, no, no. You were opening for the Ramones.
Oh, yes,
You're
opening for.
trying out some songs. At this point, did you have any songs? I know that you had. At this point, what were some of the songs that we might know that made it to some records?
Well, Psycho Killer,
Yeah, that was one that you
Warning Sign.
right. So you had some
Um,
big songs at that point.
yeah, yeah, we had written most of the first album
Okay.
at that point, and anyway, we decided, well, now's the time. We can see there's some momentum going on at CBGB's, and I mean, it had gone from being like 5 people in the room to 10 people being in the room.
Yeah.
So it was still a small scene, but we could see that it was going to build. And so we thought we better get over there and start playing. So I went to Hilly and I said, Hilly, I've got a band and we'd like to audition to play here. And he said, what kind of music do you play? He had a very deep voice. And I said, oh, we play in a style of our own. And he kind of chuckled because I think he'd heard that before.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I could put you on Thursday night in front of the Ramones. And if it goes well, you can play the whole weekend. And I said, oh, okay, we'll do it. We didn't even have a name for our band yet.
Right. So you weren't the Artistics at this point.
No, we had no name, and we decided very quickly. A friend of ours from RISD was visiting us, and he said he knew we were looking for band names, and he said, "I've been reading TV Guide. I mean, who reads TV Guide? I've been reading
tiny little TV. Yeah.
I've been reading TV Guide, and they had a glossary of cameraman terms, and one of the terms in the glossary was talking heads. It's a head and shoulders shot, and it's described as the most boring but also the most informative form of broadcasting. So we thought, oh, Talking Heads, that sounds. He said, I think you should name your band Talking Heads. And David and Tina and I looked at each other and we thought, yeah, that's a good name. And we decided to use it.
And amazing how you came up with that. It wasn't like sitting around for hours, getting high and trying to think about your name. Yeah, some guy just has and it's a great name.
Yeah, and so we performed opening for the Ramones, and after there was maybe 20 people in the audience, like 10 to see the Ramones and 10 to see us, and most of whom were either girlfriends, boyfriends, or buddies of some sort. And afterwards I heard, I was sort of wondering, well, did we pass the audition? I heard Johnny Ramone say to Hilly, yeah, okay, they can open for us because they suck. They're going to make us look good.
The ultimate compliment. Well, it worked out. It's good that you sucked because in his mind, because otherwise you might not have had that gig.
Right. Had we been really good, we wouldn't have gotten the gig.
Yeah, exactly. So needless to say, it goes pretty well. You start getting a lot of heat and people really following, and people really like you, and you're playing at other places. And one of my favorite stories in the book is the time that you guys meet Lou Reed, or he invites you over to his apartment at like 4 a.m. And understand that at this time, Lou Reed is like a god to you guys. I mean, this is like Velvet Underground's heyday, and he was just, everything that you guys wanted to be. And I just love that story. So you kind of go up to you're surprised even where he lives, because he lives in kind of a nice apartment on the Upper West Side or Upper East Side or something like that. Yeah. Right with a doorman.
Right across from Bloomingdale's.
right where my mom lives. Wow.
Well, around the corner from Bloomingdale's. And yes, he had a doorman. He had like potted plants in the lobby and everything. But we went upstairs to his apartment, and there was no furniture, one couch and one bookcase. And we sat on the couch. Lou sat on the floor.
Of course.
And he proceeded to kind of school us in his, a crash course in what to do and what not to do in the music business.
Yeah.
And, he by the end of the night, he was saying, I want you to talk to my manager. I want you to talk to my manager. I'd like to produce your record. And we thought, oh my God, Lou Reed wants to produce our record. How great is this? And that didn't work out.
Turned out to not be the greatest deal in the world that they wanted to get.
Yeah, it was a standard kind of boilerplate deal that today you would print out from the internet.
Right.
But
LegalZoom.com. Yeah. Well, but what was funny about that story also, first of all, he was eating, this is one of your details that I love, he was eating Haagen-Dazs, but not really offering to share it. So just kind of eating this like thing of Haagen-Dazs in front of you, which was probably like the hot ice cream back then, this exotic, which of course wasn't exotic.
It was something new. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And also he told David that he has to wear, he couldn't wear short sleeve shirts. He had to wear shirts that covered his entire arms. That was a big note.
Yes, because David was a hairy, I guess still is, a hairy guy. And, some people like that, but Lou did not like that.
Right.
You must cover your arms. They're too hairy. You're going to turn people off.
Yeah. Did he heed that advice for the most part? I mean, he wore these big suits with enormous shoulders.
He never really heeded that advice.
Okay.
In those days, a lot of us would, we would just wear T-shirts or polo shirts, and most of our shirts had short sleeves.
Yeah. So you eventually get a record deal, and you start working. I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, but you start working with Brian Eno, who's this legendary, former Roxy Music band member and producer, and he helps a lot, but it wasn't always the smoothest the way that those records were recorded. You reveal a lot of interesting sort of behind the scenes about the way that people were treating you during that time, which didn't seem very fair. But first,
that happened later. Our first, we did 3 records with Brian. Right. The first one was a breeze, smooth, wonderful, fantastic experience. The second one was also, which was Fear of Music, was also, we recorded that in our loft in Long Island City on 2 separate Sundays. We had to do it on Sundays because that's when there was not so much street noise, trucks going by and stuff. And that went well. It wasn't until our reputation started to increase and as a result, so did Brian's. Mm-hmm. And on the third album, Remain in Light, there were some, problems, but most of those problems were things that we could work out,
Right.
But
you went into that album with this kind of gentleman's agreement and gentlewoman's agreement that, you were going to write all these songs together and that the credits would be all together. And that's always an issue, right? Publishing is always this issue that haunts rock stars. But at the end, that wasn't really the way they wanted to. David and Brian wanted to do it. And
David and Brian reneged on their end of the deal by changing the credits that we had all agreed on. We had a big meeting over the artwork and the typeface and like how the record's going to look and how the credits are going to be printed and what size they are. And, everything was agreed on. It goes off to the printer. When it came back to us, instead of having everybody credited equally for writing in alphabetical order, it was supposed to say all songs by David Byrne, Brian Eno, Chris France, Jerry Harrison, and Tina Weymouth. Mm. When it came back to us, it said all songs by David Byrne, Brian Eno, and Talking Heads. Mm. So we thought, what the fuck? Yeah. Whose idea was this? And I still don't know if I assume it was David's idea, but I assume that Brian was on board also. And they just went straight to the printer after everything had been agreed on and changed it. And it was very if that had happened to you, you would have been upset too.
Oh yeah, I would have
And,
freaked
and
out. Maybe would have gotten a lawyer involved in it. I mean, that's pretty awful.
yeah,
But
it was pretty bad. And
because what was the process in writing those records? It really was collaborative, right? I mean,
totally collaborative. No songs were written before we went into the studio. They were all composed and created by the band members. And Brian contributed also, although sometimes not to the same extent that the rest of us did, but he did. And like he came up with "Letting the Days Go By," ba 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 ba,
yeah.
"Once in a Lifetime," and he came up with some interesting stuff.
Is that you always hear the story about "Once in a Lifetime" that David had heard a preacher on the radio? Is that a true story? I've always wondered if that's.
I think that is a true story because there were no lyrics written.
You had the beat.
We recorded all the music, and at that point, David said, these songs require, these are extraordinary songs and they require extraordinary lyrics. So I don't want to just rush through the lyrics. I would like to take some time and, compose what I think is good.
Yeah. Right.
And my understanding is what he did was rent a car and drive around some part of the country, and at some point he was listening to evangelical radio in his car, probably on the AM dial, and he heard things that inspired him to write. And you may find yourself living in a shotgun shack, and it worked great. It
works.
It's really wonderful.
Let's talk about David and your relationship, and you can tell me how much you want to talk about. And it's all in there in the book, and I think you're very candid about it. At one point, you say about David that today he might be described as a sort of a high functioning on the spectrum. So that's your feeling, is that there might have been a little bit of spectrum type behavior.
Yes, but I must preface that by saying that I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and there are a whole lot of people out there who are very sensitive to anyone being in any way critical of a person who may be on the spectrum. Mm-hmm. So let me just say that while it was my impression, I didn't really know for sure.
Yeah. And of course, you didn't call it that back then. That's kind of new terminology that we use.
Yeah.
But how did it manifest it? So without using those, just as from an observing it, how did it manifest itself? You talk a lot about, he didn't really make eye contact. He doesn't generally make eye contact. It seems to be a man of a few words, because you don't have him quoted too much in the book of him saying things. It always just seems like he's kind of there.
An example would be, the issue with the credits of Remain in Light is sort of the ultimate example of a person who's lacking in empathy, not understanding not understanding what other people have done, only understanding what he had done. And there's also in the early days, and later on, David would just wander off and disappear. And, he wouldn't say, goodbye, I'm going around, I'll be back, I'm going around the corner for a 6-pack of beer or something like that. He wouldn't do that. He'd just disappear. You'd be working with him and all of a sudden he's not there, Yeah. So there were little things like that.
Is that Tina?
That is Tina.
My God, I can't believe I get the Tom Tom Club.
Realize that when she walks into the room.
I love it. I love that the Tom Tom Club is suddenly on my computer. It's so exciting.
But one example, and Tina brought this to my attention just now, is and it's in the book, when Jerry Harrison was, both of his parents were, his mother had cancer, and the prognosis was not good. And his father, in looking after his mother. There was a lot of stress on his father. His father had a heart attack and died. And it was a very difficult period for Jerry, who was an only child. And so Jerry was having a lot of issues with, drinking too much to try to console himself, and things like that. And we had a meeting about it, and to try to decide what can we do to, for Jerry to help him get through this. And David said, we should fire him.
Not the most response.
So yeah, that's an example of lack of empathy on David's part. We should fire him. And I went to I said, I don't think we should fire him. I'm going to ask my dad, who's an attorney. I'm going to ask my dad what his law firm would do in a case like this. And I did. And my father said, well, we've had experiences like this before. And what we tell the person is they got to get themselves cleaned up. We don't care how they do it, but they should take a leave of absence, get themselves cleaned up, and then come back to work when they're ready.
Yep.
And I said, okay. And that's what we told Jerry. And Jerry said, oh, I don't want to take a leave of absence. I'll get myself together. And he did.
Yeah.
Just like that. But it was a situation that required more than just a yes or no answer.
Yeah, it wasn't. And he probably wouldn't have actually done the dirty work. It was just kind of a thought.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, right. It was like, we should fire him. You go do it, Chris. All right, let's move. So now I'm going to get really excited because we're about to talk about the Tom Tom Club, which is one of my favorite records.
Okay.
So at this point, to give a little background here, everybody sort of unannounced to you or unbeknownst to you, David decides that he's going to do a solo record after your third record. And so does Jerry, right? They both get deals to do. And again, kind of a little bit behind your back, this is all happening. You didn't really know you and Tina weren't really aware this was happening. So kind of.
Yeah.
So you guys decide to do your own solo record. Who knew that this would be the biggest one of them all? So tell me a little bit about that story. So you guys decide to go down to the Bahamas to record this record, right?
Yeah. Well, our manager got in touch with his friend, Chris Blackwell of Island Records, who owned the studio that we had already done two albums with Talking Heads. And Chris Blackwell said, well, yeah, I understand the value of a good rhythm section. Have Chris and Tina come down here and cut a single. And if I like the single, then they can do a whole album. So we said, great, because we loved Chris Blackwell. We loved Island Records. We loved Compass Point Studios. To us, it was a win-win. Yeah. Also, we only had to think about one single. We didn't have to think about
the whole record.
The whole record all at once. So we went down, we cut this song called Wordy Rapping Hood.
What are words for?
Yeah,
it's a great song. But even before that, you guys have I guess like a bungalow there near the studio that you have some people from school, your RISD days, come down and decorate, like you were saying, like, and then you call it the Tom Tom Club. That I just want to talk about that for a second. Yeah.
Well, this was our little apartment that Chris Blackwell had the idea that he would like to have an artist community around the recording studio there. Yeah. And he built a building which we bought an apartment in, and we were the first to move into it. But Grace Jones lived there, Sly and Robbie lived there. At one point, even Sean Connery lived.
Whoa. Must have been amazing.
Yeah, Joe Cocker was there. It was pretty wild.
Yeah.
And
you decorated.
We got the apartment in an interesting deal. We instead of getting money in advance, we got some real estate in advance, and that worked out really well. We still have the place, and we still.
Oh wow!
Sadly, we can't go there right now.
Yeah, now. Is Island Records still there? Is Island Records still even exist? I have an Island Records t-shirt. It's a legend.
Island was bought by Universal, and it's now called Island Def Jam. They kind of merged. Chris Blackwell doesn't have anything to do with it anymore.
Right. But you're still down there. Are you still in that apartment that you?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And, it was actually Tina's brother was, and a couple of guys we knew from RISD that were his partners designed the interior for us.
Why did you call it the Tom Tom Club?
In retrospect, I realized that I had seen a movie about beatnik kids, and I forget the title of the movie at the moment, but one of the things they would do was go to this place to hear poetry readings, and the place where they would go, poetry readings and accompanied by jazz.
Yeah.
And the name of that place that they would go to was the Tom Tom Club. So I think that's where I got it. But it made sense to me,
Yeah, and then when you came up, when you needed a band name, you're like, we have this thing called the Tom Tom Club. So that made sense. So you're recording this single, which ends up being Wordy Rapping Hood. Originally, you were supposed to have Lee Scratch Perry as your producer, but he sort of didn't show up, right? He said he was going to come. This is a very famous, for people who don't know, very famous reggae producer.
Yeah.
He says you wait for him for 2 weeks. That you finally call him up, and he just, what does he say? It's something like his hours.
Well, our manager finally got him on the phone after we'd been waiting for so long, and said, "Scratch," that was his nickname, "Scratch, Chris and Tina are waiting for you down in Nassau. What's up?" And Scratch said, "Well, man, it's about the money." And our manager said, "Oh, it's about the money. Well, what do you want?" And Scratch said, "Well, it's no problem. I only want $1,000 an hour." And
wow.
Our manager said, "Well, it sounds like you're trying to price yourself out of this gig. We can't afford $1,000 an hour." And Scratch said, "Oh, no, man, it's no problem. We'll make the album in 6 hours." So we knew at that point that maybe
that might not work out.
We were barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah.
But we're still friends with Scratch,
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so next door to where you guys are doing this all, like Grace Jones is recording an album. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And Sly and Robbie are working with her on that.
Yeah.
And
Adaroo.
Yeah. And so what a sort of environment to be in. And you guys, we should say, you and Tina were pretty hip onto the sort of hip hop scene. I sound like an old man. You were hip to the hip hop scene, but you guys were very let's just put this in context, that not a lot of white people at this point knew about hip hop. This is very early days of hip hop, and kind of people knew about R&B, but hip hop and dance hall reggae, you guys were cool. You knew that was going on. You were into that scene. You were going to see that kind of music in New York. You were listening. We were talking to this before we got on the podcast. You were listening to WBLS, which was the big urban, music radio station in New York at the time. So you guys knew the scene. And I can relate to this because even though I'm a little younger than you, not that much, when I was 13, 14 years old, I was obsessed with early hip hop. R&B music, WBLS, Kiss FM, WKTU, all these radio stations that were playing it. Made me, but I was a little bit of an outlier. Nobody in my preppy suburban town of Westchester, Dobbs Ferry, New York, was interested in that kind of music. So it's cool that you guys knew about that and were really into that. And even David, you introduced David to rap. He didn't know much about it.
I think I did. I wasn't a person who went up to the Bronx or anything.
Yeah,
what I knew about, they didn't even call it hip hop yet. They just called it rap music. But anyway, what I knew about was what had filtered downtown.
Downtown, like with Debbie Harry when she did Rapture, and she was talking about Fab Five Freddy and stuff.
Yeah, and I knew about the the graffiti artists and the break dancers and stuff like that. The three elements of hip hop,
Right. So when you went down to do Wordy Rapping Hood, the first record, were you trying to do like a dance record? Was that kind of?
We were trying to make a record that would get played in places like the Mud Club and Danceteria,
Right.
Paradise Garage, places that we had been to that we enjoyed. And so we were basically making a record that our friends could party to.
Yeah,
you know?
I love that.
Yeah.
And it was really just, you start off with a beat, right? I mean, it seems like it's for you, it started off with like a loop type of thing.
We did it the same way we did the songs on Remain in Love. You start off with a drum beat and you add the bass, and then you add a guitar and a keyboard, and then you write a vocal to go with it.
And tell the story of how you guys came up with the sort of the cheer that's like the rum bum bum or rum bum bum. I can't even do it, but
Rum Sam Sam.
Yeah, rum sam sam.
We can't. At one point, Tina was kind of struggling with what the song should be about, what the lyrics should convey, and she's thinking, words. Oh, I could write a song about words.
Yeah.
So she had this idea that the song would be about words, but and would be rapped, and in a rap style. But we needed a chorus. We needed something to like. What you call a hook for the song. Yeah. And so Tina and her two sisters, Laura and Lonnie, that were also singing on the record with Tina, they went out to the beach and they were brainstorming. And one sister, Lonnie, said to them, "Hey, you remember that song when we were living in the south of France and at the playground, the kids would sing rum sum sum or rum sum sum, kuni 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 rum sum sum," and they said, "Yeah, I do remember that."
Yeah.
And they locked arms and they came walking back into the studio and they said, "We've got something we want to try." And we said, "Great, go on in." And Stephen Stanley, the engineer, set up the mics, and they went in. And we played the track and they sang rum sam sam, rum sam sam. And we were like, "Oh, hallelujah." Because it sounded so different and so fresh and so unexpected that I mean, it was just perfect.
It's a classic. It's an absolute classic, Wordy Rapping Hood. And then it ends up being a big hit in Europe first. And so you got your hit that convinced the Island Records, Chris is his name?
Chris Blackwell, yeah.
That convinced Chris Blackwell to let you guys record a whole album. And I just want to talk to you about Genius of Love, because it really is, and I'm not just saying this because you're on the phone, really probably one of my favorite songs of all time. And it just never gets old. It's one of those songs I don't think I'll ever get sick of it. And I can't say that about a lot of music.
Well, I must tell you, I only have like couple of minutes.
Let's talk about Genius. Let's talk about Genius of Love, and then I'll let you go. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?
The only reason is some other person is breathing down my neck.
Oh no!
But let me just say that Genius of Love to me was like a work of magic. I don't know exactly. I mean, I know how we put it together and everything, but there's some magical ingredient in there that you can't really put your finger on. It's just, it makes people feel joy, and want to dance, and it's a very easy song to appreciate. It doesn't, you don't have to think about it. It just washes over you, and so yeah, the song was based on a lick by
Daz Band, right? Or
Zap,
yeah.
Yeah, they had a very unfortunate end, but at that time they were doing great, and they had this
song. It was Flashlight.
More Bounce to the Ounce.
Oh God, I'm so off. Yes, so it was More Bounce to the Ounce was the.
Yeah, that was our source of inspiration for the rhythm track, and it's not an exact copy or anything like that, but it's inspired by, and then we just took it from there.
But where did you come up with like this Genius of Love, just the concept of it, and like shouting out all these legends like James?
Well, I came up with the title Genius of Love, and the final couplet, he's the genius of love. He's got a greater depth of feeling.
Yeah.
I came up with that, but Tina came up with all the rest.
That's amazing.
And you know, I credit her.
Yeah. Does she play the bass in it?
Yeah. Well, she did create the bass part, and she played the first part, but then she was getting we were working long hours, and she got a cramp in her arm. And so a guy named Kendall Stubbs, who was the assistant engineer, who later went on to work with Kool and the Gang.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. By the way,
you got to go.
I saw that Ronald Kool Bell passed away today, so I'm very sorry to hear that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But Kendall finished the part for her, but Tina wrote the part, and she created it.
And who's saying James Brown? Is that you? Who's saying?
That was me.
No way. That's you?
That's how I got famous, man.
That's the best thing that I've ever heard. Did you just like randomly come up with a way of doing that, James Brown? Or
I was kind of in my mind, I was kind of copying his sidekick, Bobby Byrd, who would egg the audience on by saying James Brown, James Brown. Yeah. And I needed to make it a little bit more musical. So,
and a lot of people think that Sly and Robbie are playing in that record, but they're not.
They're not playing, but they are among the hand claps. We got them to come over when we added the hand claps. Tina and myself and Sly and Robbie did them.
Yeah. So you did them over and over. Apparently, like later, people were very enamored by the hand clap sound effect that you guys got. Because back in those days, you didn't have like all these effects that you could put on hand claps. You actually had to do it yourself.
You had to do it yourself. Maybe you could add some effects, but this was before sampling.
That's amazing.
I'm afraid I do have to run, but
well, listen, Chris, it has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and I love your book. It's called Remain in Love, and it is just a beautiful story and a wonderful. And you're such a nice guy to be to be a rock star. Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's a great pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.